Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who can help your athletes online, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to Sports Geek. This is episode 317. This week, I catch up with Drew Bentley, the Senior Director of Business Strategy and Analytics at DC United. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. You might be doing it on your favorite podcast app, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or my Pocket Cast, or you could do so at sportsgeekhq.com. That's where you can find every single episode of the podcast. And as always, you can always leave a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they damn well call it now. I really do appreciate the podcast reviews, and it helps the rankings, helps more people find the podcast. I really do appreciate it, and that sort of leads me to the point for podcast listeners. I've been doing the podcast since 2014, sorry. I want to hear from you. I want to hear if you're a new listener, if you're a long-time listener, if you've never reached out. Have we met? Have we not met? Have you been listening for a long time and never reached out? I'd love to hear from you. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com is my email. At Sean Callanan on all social media platforms. Please ping me a message. Tell me that you listen. Why do you listen? What kind of guests do you want to hear from? What topics do you want me to discuss? Is there something particular you want me to dive into? Do you have a podcast guest suggestion? It might be yourself. You might be working away in the world of sport in a different role, maybe in a digital role, in a ticketing role, in a data role, in a technology role. I love talking to people across all of those areas of the sports business. Or you might suggest you're CEO, and we could do one of our CEO series podcasts to get the C-level, the CEO point of view on the world of sports. So if you've got a podcast suggestion, please send me an email. Thank you very much to Amir Zanosi from Zoom. He actually connected me and Jane and I should say, with Drew for this episode. So let's get into it. Here is my chat with Drew Bentley, the Senior Director of Business Strategy and Analytics at DC United and Audi Field. Very happy to welcome Drew Bentley. He is the Senior Director of Business Strategy and Analytics at DC United and Audi Field. Drew, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome, Sean. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation today.
No problems. My first question is the one that I open up with everyone. How did you get your start in the world of sports business?
Yeah, it was, throwing it back to my days back in Iowa. So I played basketball in college, and truth be told, I went to college not really focusing as much on my career as I probably should have, or my studies. I went to play basketball, right? And looking back, not the greatest idea, but
fun times. I mean, I'm
very fun times
from a way back. So, and I played basketball in college as well, and might not have done as many of my studies. So it's part of life that helps form who you are.
It's part of life. Yeah, for sure. It's an evolution. And, I think I learned a lot of lessons while playing that really were helped me and were very transferable as far as my career goes. Put me in a lot of really tough situations that you had to figure out what a solution would be. Basketball is a great start, but played basketball in college. And once I finished my playing career, it was really, okay, now you've got to figure out who you're going to be the rest of your life, right? And I'd always identified as a basketball player, and I just didn't understand that how quickly it comes where you have to turn that page and actually understand who you're going to be. And so I ended up actually getting my start at Iowa Speedway, a NASCAR track that was at that time the only track that was owned by NASCAR. So it was a really cool opportunity. I worked with some really, really good leaders there, and they really just gave me an opportunity to learn about every area of the business. I got to touch things that were outside of my job description, outside of my scope, but it was all in the guise of trying to give me the opportunity to learn so they can hopefully cultivate the next generation of sports stars, which is kind of cool now how it comes full circle in that respect. But really cool opportunity, focused a lot on ticket sales, ticket operations, service, premium sales, camping, parking, all of the kind of the full menu stuff at the NASCAR track. And then, I was even the guy that shot off the smoke machines and confetti cannon in Victory Lane when the winning car came in. So it was a pretty cool thing,
yep.
Right when I would close up the box office, I'd head down with a golf cart to the infield and shoot
yep.
that stuff off. It was pretty cool experience.
And it's pretty much that case of those early jobs. A lot of people, either shooting off confetti cannons or putting on a mascot costume that no one realizes it's the person in the ticketing office, or you're setting up tents for at the front at 5 a.m. in the morning before everyone comes in. It's very much, it's where you do learn all the different facets of sport by in those early roles of all the setup and administration. Sort of sets you in a good stead later in life when you are managing and different teams.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the coolest thing is for me, like I really enjoyed being able to work at relatively smaller organizations, specifically at the start of my career, because I've had the opportunity to, for lack of a better term, wear so many different hats. Right, you get to be a part of so many different conversations that just help shape and cultivate that mindset that later on in my career. Now I'm looking back at some of those experiences in the moment. I thought I was just doing things to do things, but I'm looking back and actually utilizing those experiences and that perspective now to shape how we're building our business here at DC United. So it's been pretty cool.
So at NASCAR, your first couple of roles were in that ticketing, group sales, cheeks in the seats, as we like to say, getting people to the venue. How did you, and then you started moving into the analytics area and started looking at the data. Like, was that a natural progression? Or was that you as a competitive salesperson going, hey, I want to get more tickets in? Like we started looking at what's next?
Yeah, it was interesting. I a couple facets to that, right? I think when I was at the NASCAR track, again, I had been in Iowa my entire life, and the track was in Iowa. And I knew at some point it's probably going to be in my best interest to at least expand my horizons, get a new perspective, live in a different place. And so, towards the end of my time there, I was trying to determine which route I wanted to go, because I had so much great experience in both the sales side of things and the service side, but also on the ticket operations and reporting side of things. And I got to work with somebody at the NASCAR track who really helped me better understand how to utilize Excel and how to take just the raw data that we had and really ingest that and start putting together insights that are going to help us make better decisions. And so I was at kind of a crossroads at the end of my 3 years there, and I was thinking, okay, do I want to go the sales and service route, or do I want to go the operations and analytics route? And, I had a few different opportunities in the NBA as far as ticket sales that I could have explored. And then I had a few different opportunities on the operations and analytics route. And ultimately what it came down to for me was I probably could have made a little bit more money on the front end by going the sales route to start with. But I knew someday I wanted to be in a leadership position, and I wanted to start being in the room when some of those more strategic decisions were being made and understanding what sort of information those leaders use to make those decisions, right? And so I decided to go for the operations and analytics route, and where that took me was about the most different place within the contiguous United States from the state of Iowa, which is Miami, Florida, down to the Orange Bowl committee. And so it was so weird how that would happen. So one of the things that I did when I was in my role at the Speedway was every 2 to 3 weeks or so, I would reach out to somebody who was in an elevated role at a sports organization, and director, VP, whatever it may be, and just ask them for 10 to 15 minutes of their time to hear their story. And one of the people that I had actually connected with during that time was actually, ironically, the VP of ticket sales at the Washington Nationals, David McElwee. And David decided to move down from DC to Miami to work for the Orange Bowl committee and heading up business development, which encompassed all revenue generation essentially at the Orange Bowl. And I'd reach out to him and just said, hey, congratulations on the role, moving down there. And one of the, they were actually looking for someone to come in and lead ticket operations and analytics for the Orange Bowl. And so him and I had reconnected on that. And, after about a month or so long interview process, I was like, I got an offer from him. I'm like, well, this is so surreal. I'm going to be moving from Iowa to Miami, Florida. This is going to be the most different thing in the world. And everybody's like, are you sure you're going to be okay with it? Like, it's so different. It's warm, it's just very crazy.
So for just for some context for my international listeners, when you say Orange Bowl, explain what that event is, and how it is not only the geographical location, but how it is different from NASCAR, where it's content at tracks and multiple races. If you're managing a track, to when you're talking about what is the Orange Bowl committee.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, right at the NASCAR track, I worked for a venue. So we didn't have a team. We didn't have driver. Like, we were the venue. I go down to the Orange Bowl, and we are not a venue anymore, right? The Orange Bowl itself is actually where Marlins Park and the MLB is now. So the Orange Bowl is actually a 501c3 nonprofit events company, and they have an office space in Miami Lakes, Florida. And so we put on a multitude of events over the course of the year, the flagship being the Capital One Orange Bowl, which is a New Year's Six Bowl. And then every third year, it's a playoff semifinal. And so we had that. We had a Division I basketball doubleheader with Florida State, and then a couple of other teams each year. We managed all the ticketing for the Boca Raton Bowl up at Florida Atlantic University. And then we had like a more of a food and wine celebration and a few ancillary events that happened throughout the year. So it was really, you didn't have any events that you were activating from like January until December. And then everything happens in a 10-day span within December. And it is just like the most hectic time in the world.
It's like a major event company in the same way. I might talk to the Australian Open or the Grand Prix. Everything is peaking around that NCAA college football game and everything around it, but then all the ancillary events is what the committee is. So it's a very very different ticketing proposition, because different teams every year, different colleges are engaged. It's not like a season ticket holder piece. Like, it must have been a really unique and challenging, I guess, ticketing role.
It really was. I think that the thing I learned the most when I was and I owe this to my first boss at the NASCAR track, was he instilled in me from the start of my career that details are the most important thing in your career, right? Like, focus on the details and don't let the things slide by you. And when I got down to the Orange Bowl, that was really put to the test, because we had 65,490 seats at Hard Rock Stadium. One of the first things I did when I got there is I went out with the director of ticket operations for the Dolphins, and I said, let's count this entire stadium. And so we counted literally every single seat in the house. It took like 3 days, but it was a great experience. And I got to really see and visualize the venue through that. David, who ended up hiring me at the Orange Bowl, he always said that, it was 10 times more hard to sell 65,000 seats for the Orange Bowl than it was to sell, millions of tickets for the Nationals, because every single seat in the house was so important to ultimately how the Orange Bowl had a full venue. And it was very interesting. We did have a semblance of season ticket holders that renewed for the game every single year. We had a membership base that had purchasing requirements. And then, we were the only bowl team at the time, from my understanding, that had an actual outbound sales team. And so we had a group of sales reps that would be calling businesses and people throughout the South Florida community to try to say, hey, here's how you could utilize this to impact your business on a positive level. So it was a really cool opportunity down at the Orange Bowl. I was definitely put to the test. I would say from Thanksgiving on, like, you're working probably 15-hour days, but once you're through that, you sleep for a week and you're like, okay, it was a really, really cool experience. And it was just a fantastic place to be.
So in 2019, you made the move to DC United in a ticket operations role. You're now Senior Director of Business Strategy and Analytics. What does that role mean? What is your role now?
Yeah, so my role now is I head up our strategy and analytics team, and it really encompasses a couple different verticals. Ticket operations is still under our umbrella, and I think that's of value because it's our biggest data source, and making sure that you have that built-in collaboration between the team that is building all of your price codes, all of your events, and then the analytics team that has to then define those and ultimately use those to tell the story is really important. So we have ticket operations, CRM lives within there as well. So all of our customer relationship management software that all of our sales reps utilize to manage their sales process. And then additionally, the analytics functions for the organization and strategy related to how do we generate revenue. So it's a pretty fun role right now. It's definitely morphed, and there's been like multiple phases of it. When I first came up here, it was like director of ticket operations, and I was just leading kind of that team. And then after about 3 months or so, we merged analytics and ticket operations together. And we saw a lot of benefit from that. And then we were excited about where it was going. We had a great team in place. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, right? And it's like, Well,
Yep.
we don't have all of these events that we're supporting any longer because there's no events that are actually happening. So honestly, the pandemic, while it was a very tough time for a lot of people, it was a real big opportunity for us. And I think we would look back on it and say it was a pivotal moment in our club's history as far as being able to right size our systems, get our processes in place, understand the logic that we're building behind all of our tools and how all of our data is configured, so that when we come back from the pandemic, things are working in a great format, right? And we had put all this stuff together. We had a really good, cool proof of concept, and at that time, our analytics support was only related to the ticketing department. So we were focused on supporting ticketing from everything that we're doing, but our new head of business, Danita Johnson, came in February of 2021, and I had scheduled a 1-hour meeting with her just to say, here's what our department looks like. It was like her second or third day on the job. I was like, here's what our department looks like. Here's what we've been able to accomplish so far. Here's where we're thinking of going. And she was like, well, this meeting went from 1 hour to 3 hours. And by the end of it, she was like, this is fantastic. I love what you guys have done. We need to take the same approach to our entire business. So she kind of broke us out of ticketing. And then now I report up through her, and it's really been a cool process to just get involved with all the other departments. It's been such a cool learning experience for all of us to like better understand how every bit of our business contributes to the overall greater good, right?
That's the piece I wanted to ask, because like a bit like, I play in the digital space, and you hear the term fan engagement, and it can be so wide and mean so many things to so many people. And so can analytics. You can say the word analytics to different people, to a ticketing person, to a digital person, to a sponsorship person, to a C-level executive, and they all have different understanding of it, because everything can have analytics applied. And that was going to be my question of, a lot of people start their analytics journey around the ticketing, because it is the richest data. It is people have turned up, you've got their data, if they've turned up or not turned up. You can look at their email comms and that kind of stuff. But then that widening of like the almost whole of business, or, how does digital engagement connect with your ticketing? Is that what you mean by it's starting to widen up, and you're taking that holistic view and trying to bring as many data points into the picture from your analytics, now role in that expansion piece?
100%. It's really understanding what are the tools and the technologies and the data that each department is utilizing and generating. How do we wrap our arms around that, pull that into a centralized place, which is obviously our data warehouse? And then how do we start to utilize that and provide a little bit more proactive recommendations to them so that their operations are a little bit less reactive? And how we like to kind of view our analytical support for the organization is in 3 real phases, right? There's the first phase, which is descriptive data. Can we accurately tell what has happened at our organization with our current set of circumstances? The second phase is then using a lot of that descriptive data to fuel our predictive models. So we can tell you what has happened. We can tell you what is likely to occur based on how things are going right now. Third and final phase is prescriptive. And that is, okay, we understand what has happened. We can tell you what likely will happen. What do we want to happen? How do we engineer those outcomes, whether it's people, whether it's process, whether it's technology? And I think we look at this across multiple departments. In the ticketing space, we are in that third and final prescriptive phase where we're saying, okay, if we want to hit X amount of season tickets in the next 5 years, here's what we need from a sales rep perspective, from a digital marketing perspective. Here's all these things we need to have together so that works. But like per se on the corporate partnership side of things, we're still in phase 1. We're still in the descriptive stage. We're still trying to make sure we have all of their information. Not only do we have their information, do we understand what it means? Because a lot of the people on my team have come up through the ticketing ranks. And so we understand that world a lot. We don't necessarily understand the corporate partnerships world as much, right? So it's a lot of questions, right? We're a very inquisitive group, and we sit down for just these meetings with our partnerships team to just say, help us better understand what this means. How do you guys usually sell inventory? We know how tickets are sold. We don't necessarily know as well how partnerships are sold. And so we've been through that for a full year now, and it's been exciting to understand how they actually, like what their sales cycle looks like compared to a ticket sales cycle, for example.
But also, you've also got the partnership side starting to learn the analytics side themselves. Like they've gone from selling sponsorship in a certain manner, and now brands have people like yourself on their side going, well, we want to analyze how this sponsorship is working. How is it working for us? Is it is there brand uplift? Are we getting the appropriate responses? Are we getting people to be signing up for our service? So when you're seeing, the commercial teams and the partnerships teams out there starting to get pushed back in these questions, like they need those analytics answers of, oh no, this is what our demographic looks like. Oh, this is what our fans do. Some of that predictive stuff, and I do feel like that is now catching up, and more of the partnerships teams are getting in sync with knowing, we really need to know what our fan looks like. We know that from a ticketing point of view, digital point of view. So I think the learning is happening on both sides. And are you seeing some of those, some of those successes in, more, you're getting more requests and those meetings with partnerships as where you're putting more analytic data or putting more insight into the pitch decks, so it's less big brand and here's our logo and look at our players. Here's a picture of a full stadium, but it's more, here's the data that sits on top of that pretty picture.
Exactly.
That's the clincher.
100%. I think we're able to tell a little bit more of a holistic story as to how these brands now can create meaningful connections with our fan base. And ultimately that's the goal. A lot of these brands, right? Some of them have different priorities. Some of them it's increasing awareness for who they are. Some of them it's making better inroads and community relations efforts within the local region, right? Like everybody has a different goal as to why they do partnerships with a team or a club like this. And I think from our end, right, we're trying to make sure that we understand what is going to resonate best with our fan base, but also position our club for continued success. And so it's been really cool to see. I think I was just pulling some numbers here a little bit ago, and we looked at it in 2021. We were supporting, from an analytics perspective, 53% of everything that we did was related to ticket sales, ticket operations. And so It was over half, right? And now we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, those same two departments are taking up 33% of our total efforts. So it's not saying we've decreased our support 20%. It's saying we've expanded our support to every other department so that percentage is a little bit less. And so it's been really exciting to be able to measure that and see how much of where our efforts are being dictated and ultimately what's going to drive the business forward. And
effectively, driving business is revenue. And when you look at the sports business pie, the revenue is ticketing, sponsorship, and the media revenue. There's two that you, from an internal team, can really affect. The other thing I think the piece is looking at, opportunities that happen around the club, and then how they can be opportunities for data, more insights, more fans. We're always in this fan development phase. European teams are pushing into US, and they're very much doing that, with multiple tours. You were lucky enough to have Bayern Munich come to town and play DC United. How did you tackle that, both as an opportunity, but also leveraging that opportunity, but then also learning from and working with the team from Bayern?
That was probably my favorite project that I've worked on since I've been at DC United, working with the Bayern Munich team. First and foremost, they're fantastic partners to work with. So anybody that is listening to this, I would urge you to work with Bayern Munich if you can. They were fantastic. For us, we broke it down in kind of 4 key buckets. And when we look at recapping that event and what it meant to our business, first it was from a ticket sales and partnerships perspective, super beneficial to our organization and some record-setting numbers, right? We ended up with an average ticket price of around $116, which is far and away higher than any other event that we've ever had. It sold out 2 weeks prior to the match. We were able to do some incremental revenue as far as dynamic pricing. But then one of the cooler things that we did is we did a phased rollout where we said, okay, first off, we're going to offer this to our season ticket members at a greatly reduced rate as a benefit to the season ticket membership. The next element of that was we said, okay, and we worked with our partners at FIVO to launch kind of a new buy flow where you can essentially go through FIVO, purchase a ticket, and then it uploads a voucher.
Yep. Okay. And were you using that because FIVO have the group ticketing as well, where one person buys the 10 and it makes it a lot easier for which is a really cool tech, because there's always I'm with my mates, it's like, we are going and you buy the 10 tickets and then you've got to get all the money, but it's got, it's quite a unique system where you buy it and effectively you've got your own little referral link, but it groups all the people together.
It does. And they were really born out of the group sales side of things, but then they started venturing into, they just have such a clean purchase flow, and you can really communicate what an experience is going to be pretty well through that platform. So what we did was we said, okay, the next phase of this on sale before we go out to the general public is saying, we're going to do what's called a 2-match pack. So we combined a ticket to the Bayern Munich match and a voucher to be used later for a DC United game. And what we found was there were a lot of people that said, okay, I want the best available seats, so I'm going to go in and purchase that 2-match pack, which automatically uploaded that voucher. We then sent them reminder emails that said, go in and redeem that voucher for a DC United game. And it was really cool because we used data to get to that. We didn't just say, okay, we want to do a 2-match pack. We found through a lot of our information in the over the past year or so, if we're able to get somebody out to 2 DC United matches, we have a 1 in 4 chance of turning them into a season ticket member. That is incredible, right? So a goal for us this year is, how do we get them to 2 matches? This fell right in line with that goal. And so we were able to get people out to 2 matches, and hopefully we'll have, when we look back at the results of this, we'll be able to convert a considerable amount of those into season ticket members. But it's really trying to give people access to what we're doing down here. And I think, the MLS still has a lot of growth left. And that's what's so exciting about it every day. There's people that have been fans of soccer globally for a long time that have yet to get into MLS. And we just have so many people that we want to taste and experience our product that we got to find creative ways to reach them. Right.
It's a terrific way, because again, there would have been a lot of people in Audi Field for the first time, but they were massive football fans. They're, up early, on a Saturday morning watching Premier League or, different European leagues, and not realizing, just down the road or that you can watch live football. It's a really good way. And then that piece around the 2, attending 2 matches, become a season ticket holder. It reminds me, talking to Aaron Lavallee with LA Galaxy, was the same thing of getting their fan journeys going. It was like, when we get people to 3 or 4 games, like we had to get them to those single games. And then when we got to 3 or 4 games, it's like, well, then that we put them on a different journey from an email point of view and a comms point of view to, get them to upgrade. That's data 101. That's, it's not, I think 10 years ago when we were hearing a lot of slides with the words big data, and everyone was just, what is big data? It's actually, you've got to actually get into the data and get those insights, and then it's actioning them. There's not a big data button, you hit a button and something comes out. It's finding those nuggets of, this is what fans are doing. So again, terrific opportunity. The other opportunity is, I was interested, Wayne Rooney has come on board as your manager, a really well-known UK footballer, footballer from the world stage. What was the impact from the club's point of view with Wayne coming on board? Was there a ticket bump because he's not on the pitch like some of the stars that have come to the MLS, but he's there as a manager? Did it build press? Was it another opportunity to bring in some of those international football fans into Audi Field?
Yeah, I think when I first got here, Wayne was actually a player for us back in 2019, and so that was a cool opportunity as well. And I know when he came in 2018, the club went on a run of winning like 15 of their last 17 games or something like that, something just crazy, and really ingrained him with the DC community. And it's been really cool to see it come full circle and for him to come back to the club. I mean, just around that announcement, it was massive from a PR and a communications perspective. But we did see some increase in people reaching out and wanting to get more involved with what we're doing. And Wade's been a great steward for the club and for the game globally. So we're really excited to have him back and really looking forward to. Last year obviously was a challenging year for us on the pitch, but really looking forward to a turn of the page here into 2023 and seeing, with a full year and a full off season of preparation for him and the group on the soccer operations side, what they can do. And we have high expectations for sure. So.
Terrific. Another piece of another project that you've got coming up is the MLS All-Star Game. One, what does that entail, and then how do you tackle that as a new opportunity? You're obviously going to have tourists and people potentially travelling in for it, but then also there's that carrot to reward your own season ticket holders. Have you started setting that strategy and setting the plans for what that's going to mean for the team internally, and then how do you best leverage the event?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we announced that last summer, we saw a lot of real great interest from the community, and I think just for us, it's a cool opportunity for us to be for us to showcase not only Audi Field but DC as a whole to the global soccer community, and getting the industry here for that time frame next summer. We're really looking forward to that, and hopefully, we're able to program some things that really resonate well with all the attendees. I think it's going to be an awesome opportunity to watch world class soccer, but all of the stuff that goes on around that related to how we use it from a community relations and our foundation perspective, I think it's going to be really cool. Obviously, they have skills challenge and concerts and things like that. So I think we're going to have a massive opportunity to engage with just people in the DMV area at a pretty high level, but really excited to be able to offer first right to purchasing tickets to our season ticket members and really showing value there. So hopefully they come out and are able to enjoy the match. I think it's just gonna be a really cool opportunity for everybody involved for sure.
And is there a balance, because All-Star games are effectively league properties, but you're the host, so there's obviously league partnerships and league responsibilities you've got to do. So it's not completely your event, but like, how much is it getting people into the stadium and then sort of almost going back to your Orange Bowl days, going, well, DC United's doing all these other things around the event that we can take advantage of, whether it be your partner activations or your partner fan events that are happening around it. How do you tackle that and also work with the league? Because, like I said, it's their event.
Yeah, it is a league event. And this is where this one differs a little bit from, like, say, when we had Bayern Munich in, where we are literally running the entire thing. We're setting everything up from a ticketing perspective. We're the promoter. We're the ticketer. We're doing everything around it. The league actually tickets this on their own. So, we've been in a little bit more of a consultative role with them at this point. It's really saying, here's how our venue is set up. Here's how we typically program our premium spaces. Here's what a fan expectation is when they come into the venue. Here's how you guys should be positioning all of our different seating products and the game itself. And then obviously when the game happens, we'll support from an access control perspective, getting people into the venue at a high level, guest services, all that sort of a thing. But it is the MLS's event, but we are in a more of a consultative role there. And it's cool to be involved in and be able to work closely with our counterparts at the league office to put something like this together. So, we still have a lot of planning left to do. We do have like 7 months until it occurs. So there's a lot of work still to be done, but I think, we've got some great counterparts over there and looking forward to that.
You talked about it earlier about your sort of your fork in the road career-wise, looking at sales and analytics. And, I think you made the right choice when a lot of people have said to me, hey, I want to get into sports, and I'm in the digital space. I've always seen that data and analytics space as a growing area, and it definitely has been, like, even 2010 to 2015, attending a lot of seat conferences and talking to CRM folk like Charlie Shin and Russell Scabetti, rising up the ranks and seeing those teams grow, because this in the same, in your role, where people have gone, oh, the more we know, the more the more we can plan. What advice would you have for someone that wants to get into analytics? Is there particular tools that they should be looking at? Should they be getting a good grounding in, getting seats in the seats and understanding the sales process? Like, what are you looking for in people that want to get into the analytics space?
Yeah, I think it's different now for people getting in versus when I was getting into it, right? It was still more of an emerging department and not something that was completely normalized across the industry. And so I was able to say, look, I want to take the initiative to jump into this and start to better understand this. And ultimately, that's how I was able to do it. But if I was coming in now with the level of skills that I had, I probably wouldn't have been as equipped to do it. There are some more technical skills that are required nowadays. And we, I think as we're we're hiring for a role right now, a manager of strategy and analytics on our team. And when we look for that, people are always like, what are you looking for in this role? And I'm like, well, there's a semblance of technical skills related to understanding, SQL and how to build visualizations within Tableau and things like that. But really what we're looking for is people who fit not only the culture and vibe of our team, but are inquisitive in nature. And we want people who want to ask questions, who want to see, how do we use this information to make better decisions? At the end of the day, right, like, our job is not to just put together the most complicated and intricate model as possible and talk over anybody's head. Our job is to take all of this raw data, comb through that, and get it into a spot where we're able to tell a really cohesive story about what the recommendation for the next step in our business process is, right? And data's not always going to tell you every single decision that's going to happen. It's meant to influence and help make sure you have the information so that you can make the best possible decision. But we know that there's a semblance of intuition that comes into that, right? As well, where it's not always data focused, it's data supported, right? And I think that's a key thing. Another thing, is like people think when you're working in data analytics that you're going to just somehow find this $1 million silver bullet that solves every single problem. And that's not really our team's job. Like, our team's job is to go out and find 20 to 30 smaller wins over the course of the year, whether it's process development, whether it is data that we have that we found something that we didn't know before. But we're trying to find 20 to 30 wins. And at the end of the year, when you stack all of that up, that is a substantial value to our organization. And so it's good experience for everybody to see how we got to that. So.
Yeah, to use a baseball analogy, it is keep hitting those singles, keep getting on base, and eventually the runs keep moving. I think the piece is that I take away, and I completely agree, is that why? Like, having someone that's, hey, this is our data from last year, this is who's turning up. And the people you want is people, who want to go, well, why did that happen? And then, you can get someone that has great proficiency in Excel, right, which is still the starting point for a lot of people doing their data analytics, or more advanced tools, and then being able to pull the levers of a Power BI or a Google Data Studio or Tableau to be able to visualize it. But it's sort of it's not, oh, I'm really good at the tool. It's like, I'm really good at asking the tool the right questions to try to get those right answers. And sometimes you will ask the question and not get the answers you want, but you've got to be able to at least be able to interrogate the data and say, well, this is why I'm doing it. I'm trying to understand why less people are opening our email, or less people are clicking through, or people who are buying on this day aren't turning up, or and trying to, again, find those stories and find those 1% in different pieces. And then, if you are inquisitive in nature, to go, I want to understand that, or they're the people that I think, will fit in a lot of different departments, but definitely in analytics, because it sometimes takes it a bit of digging and a bit of sifting through that data to find a few of those nuggets that become those 1% that keep adding up.
Yeah, and this came to the forefront a little bit more so when we started expanding into other departments here at the organization. But I always tell our team too, like, you don't always have to know the answer. Most of the time, you're not going to know the answer, but you have to know how to look for the answer. You have to know how to find it, ask the right questions, and find yourself in a place where you're getting access to what you need to make that right decision. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like, our job is to tell a story. Our job is to utilize the information that we have to tell the narrative, and then provide their next recommendation as to where we go as an organization. And sometimes, I think the challenge too is, like, people working in analytics care so much about the information and the data that they found, because it took a lot of work to get to that.
Yep.
And I think sometimes the challenge that people will face in the analytics space too is the fact that sometimes they're going to provide a recommendation because that's what the data is telling them. And if that recommendation is not taken, it hampers their attitude, and it makes it challenging. And, you have to take yourself back a little bit and say, and understand, like, our job is not necessarily to make all decisions. It's to provide the data or the information to our next layer of support so that they have what they need to make the right decision. Because at the end of the day, we aren't going to make every decision. Not everything's going to be data first, but we like what it is, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, and then if you look at the coaching side, and we're seeing the growth of the analytics of the on-field, on-court product, to take that same analogy, an assistant coach goes, here's what the analytics say, but the head coach still makes the decision. But because of that information, and if you still to take that same, approach, it's like, well, the assistant coach has to keep making those cases so the head coach can decide. And again, it's important, like, making the decision to go one way or other can only happen if that data story and that presentation is made. So it's not lost work. It's not, it's not ignored work, but it is something you got to understand, that it's like you're putting forward your hypothesis, your theory, your strategy, doesn't mean it's wrong if it's not taken, because there's so many different levers for a team to pull strategically.
Yeah, and sometimes, right, it's not taken right now, but maybe a year from now it is taken when you look back and maybe the other decision didn't work out, right? There's just so many different ways that you can utilize this information to make better decisions. And, from time to time, you've got to divorce yourself from that outcome and think, I'm still going to keep coming back even if it's not taken. And, just pushing through that and getting yourself to a place where, you're consistently coming with best practices and recommendations and keeping a great attitude while doing it. I think that's really the key for a lot of our team members.
One of the things that I do joke about with my data geeks is the idea of a data journey. You're all on a journey, you're effectively on this never-ending, you're climbing a mountain that has no top, because you're always looking for a new refining or something different from a warehouse point of view, or the data that's coming in. What are you working on? What's your next thing for your data, CRM, data warehouse, the whole picture? What's the next thing that you're working on and refining at the moment?
Yeah, we've got a couple cool things that we're working on right now. One of them is a data warehouse migration. So we're migrating out of our legacy SSB system, where we used to have data warehousing and CRM through SSB. At the start of this year, SSB actually it's sold their Pro Sports Holdings over to Core Software, and so we've still been operating for the last year on the SSB tech stack, but now we're starting to migrate into all of the core tech stack, and it's been a really cool process to work with their team on, just configuring all of our different CRM modules that live within native Microsoft Dynamics, which has been a little bit easier for our sales team to utilize. And then, the data warehousing perspective, they've got so many standardized connections built out at Core that we're able to see our business in a lot more of a holistic manner. When I told you earlier, right, that all of our data-driven support was focused on the ticketing side of things. All of our automated connections were that way too. So any support we're doing outside of ticketing, it was a lot of manual table uploads into the warehouse and then manipulating it and telling the story through Tableau. Whereas now we're going to have food and beverage, merchandise. The MLS has a feed that they send over, survey data, email marketing. All of these things are now automated and flowing into our warehouse. And so we're going to be able to connect all of those dots in such a more efficient manner. And, the other thing is I remember when I first started here at DC United, we spent about 85% of our time aggregating information, which only left us 15 to 20% to actually do something with it. We flipped that now to where we're in 80% of our time is spent actually utilizing the information, we're only aggregating and cleansing and doing all of that process 15, 20% of the time. And so it's been cool to see that progression as we move forward for sure. But the data warehousing side of things.
And again, that piece of moving from, physically uploading or doing to the manual labor or that early data stuff, which is, hey, we've run a competition. We have to pull it out of that software and put it in this software and send them on. But which we've all done because the connections aren't there. As you start going from, drinking from the tap and it's a time to a full on fire hose, how do you handle cool, now we've got everything, the data overwhelm as you get more of that data in and you're like, what am I meant to look at? Am I meant to look at food and beverage? As you start to get more in, how do you both, you have your team all excited, all this data, but how do you start focusing going, well, what should we be looking at? How do you prioritize those first couple of steps of as you start getting more capabilities and more data coming into your system?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think we look at it by department a little bit, and then we look at it what our key priorities organizationally are going to be over the course of the next year, and that will help us prioritize. We also use a project management tool called Asana that helps us really just keep all of our different projects that we're working on and kind of the status of those, rank the priority of them. And so it allows our team to manage their day in a really good way. And then it writes back the analytics of how long it's taken to do certain things. And so we know we can plan out our days in a pretty cohesive manner. I think that's been a real exciting piece of this. The next cool thing I would say that we're working on is an automated fan journeys through email marketing software. And so one thing that we, how we had been set up at DC United was we have Microsoft Dynamics CRM, but the MLS also provides Salesforce Marketing Cloud as a email service provider to all of the clubs.
Yep.
Dynamics and Salesforce don't inherently talk to each other, as we know. So that was always a challenge where it was like, okay, we need to send an email out. You need to go into Dynamics. You need to go into Ticketmaster, pull out a report, upload that as a data extension, and it just made everything one-to-one, and it took a lot of time on the part of the email marketing team. And so at the start of 2021, we were connected with a company based out of the UK called Sports Alliance. And Sports Alliance, what they were able to do was not just connect our CRM to our email service provider, but our entire data warehouse and all of those variable fields directly to our email service provider. And then they provide a pretty easy and clean drag and drop UI that allows us to build segmentations in a pretty cohesive manner that ultimately allows us to then do multi-layered fan journeys. And so we've got 11 automated fan journeys that are running at the current moment. Some of them are sales focused based on people who are in certain stages of the sales process with our team. People who have come out to their first game, once they come to that first game, they get sent an automated fan journey for first-time buyers, and then it tries to get them back for that second game, as we talked about, bringing it back a little bit full circle. We've got some service-related ones related to if you're a season ticket member, if you're a first-time season ticket member, they all have different journeys that they're on. And then we've got some that are more database-driven, right, where it's like a welcome email. Once you sign up for our newsletter, you get an automated email that's welcoming you, letting you know how to download our app, where to watch us on TV, all of these different things, right? And so we're just trying to set it up so that there's less of people have to do stuff in the moment, but people can just tweak and refine on the back end because we have all those processes already set up. And so that's been a really fun thing for us to work on over the past couple of years. And, just being able to automate a lot of that stuff, it's great. Like the coolest one that we set up was like a product focused journey for people who were actively worked leads within our ticketing system. We sent them an email that said, here are suites, premium seats, general seats, and supporter seats. And based on whatever one they clicked on, it would time out 24 hours and send them a follow-up email with more detailed information on that specific product. Once they've opened that email up, we then set it up so it sends that lead over to a sales rep, and a sales rep calls and it's like, hey, I know that you're interested in premium seats. And it helps that conversation go along a little bit quicker, less touch points of conversion, the sales teams being more efficient, and it's all cyclical. Everything kind of affects each other in that respect.
And the good thing about that, and we're both geeking out about it, is there's a lot of work to set it up, and then it's done, and you don't see it's not like the developed EDM that gets sent out to everyone, and you see all the tickets for the All-Star game or a band game, but it's like it gets set up and then it is running and it is monitored. But in 12 months' time, you can see that journey, does have results, and it's 2 or 3 months work here, 12 months down the line, it's like, oh, that bit of work it's just ongoing. Someone signs up here, they do this action, and we are getting revenue. So it's something that 15 years ago was there was no revenue coming from that, and now someone can do that work to that personalized. And I think that's the best example of it, and I think we're getting to that whole personalization, everyone getting their own thing, but getting some of those key automations right, massive revenue drivers once they're set up. And then it's just building that library. You've got 11 now, and it's like, what does it look like in 18 months' time? Because someone dives into the data and says, well, we see this drop off here. What should we send here, and here? So
exactly, and it's back to having the attributable revenue. You always view it and you say in the old school terms, it's like ticketing and sponsorship are the only revenue generating departments. But that's not true. Every department is revenue generating when it comes down to it. Things that are the touch points that our community relations team has in our community, those are revenue generating. Our email marketing team is revenue generating. You can look at any email that's sent and have attributable revenue that comes back from that based on how personalized that was and how that information resonated with people. Like leading into our games this past season when we were doing single match ticket pushes, not everybody would get the same thing. We identified 3 core psychographics that were going to help us grow as an organization. The first one was families. The next was community and social seekers. And gosh, what was the final one? I have that here. And the final one was soccer fans, right? And it's like each of those different people would get different information in their emails. So if you were classified as a soccer fan based on the data that we do have on you, you're going to get more information on the matchup that's coming in. How good is the other team that's coming? What players do they have? Whereas if the community seeker, if they're getting that, they're like, I'm going to tune this out because it's not relevant to me. but we're sending them
Yep.
stuff that has, good visuals of here's what our rooftop experience looks like. There's
Yep.
cold beers at the game during a hot summer month, right? And like those are the things that are going to resonate with those people. So they would get a different version of that same email. And it just helps us build those touch points with each of the fan bases.
And that's why, if you're listening to this is why analytics people are your best friend, because they can prove the work that you are doing is driving in revenue, right? And I, doing digital to dollars, like a lot of the times I talk with digital teams and they're like, you need to show what you're doing, because the CEO will say, likes and people watching, like it doesn't mean anything if you're not driving revenue. And so, developing content for some of those personas you're talking about, like you need to do that in your content plan because it helps feed that piece. But then also making sure that your analytics folk can say, oh, that video did drive this action and we got more signups. Like really having that commercial focus really can change the perspective of, or the perception, sorry, I should say, of the digital department. Like having them know that, and that's why you got to make sure your geeks are well looked after, because they can help tell the story of this is the revenue that you've brought in. So, because you're right, everyone is bringing revenue, and it's a good. It's a good metric to have up on the board. As much as social media metrics are great, there's a bit of vanity to them. Nothing makes executives happy as dollars in the door.
Exactly. And you've got to be real, disciplined and detailed on the back end to make sure that you're tagging these things the right way, right? To be able to attribute something to a specific effort, you've got to set it up in a way that allows you to parse that out, right? If you just pull everything in as one campaign, you're not going to be able to understand that it came from this email or that phone call,
yep.
right? And so being detailed on the back end as far as how you set up your tracking mechanisms is very, very important.
Exactly. That's getting your digital plumbing in order. There's nothing worse than saying we did a whole bunch of things, but we don't know what happened. It's like, just get your your plumbing in order, and then we can make sure we can track it down. Drew, very thankful for you to come on. I want to finish off with the Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
First sports event I ever attended was actually University of Iowa men's basketball against Kansas in the year 2000. And I was actually looking back at this the other day. Iowa did end up beating Kansas, who was ranked at the time. And then they also went on to beat number 1 UConn that year. But the back half of the year was not great. And I think they finished under 500. But they had a couple key wins that year for sure.
Terrific. You would have been to a lot of sports events, and the food scene has almost changed as much as the data and analytics scene. Do you have a favorite food memory or a favorite or a go-to food at a sports event?
I've got a couple from earlier on in my life. It is the ice cream cones at Carver Hawkeye Arena. If you've ever been to an Iowa basketball game, you got to get the ice cream cones. But I would say my current one is definitely the El Salvadorian special pupusas here at Audi Field. Okay. Have you ever had a pupusa, Sean?
No, I don't believe so. What is a pupusa?
It's basically, I don't know if it's corn flour or whatever, but it's it's cheese, it's meat, it's bread all together in like a kind of a flat compressed. It is.
You had me at cheese.
That's where we have most people too.
What's the first app you open in the morning?
My first app that I open in the morning is Phil's Coffee. It is a coffee shop right next to my apartment, and I put in my mobile order and I get right over to there to get my cold brew, and that's the first thing.
Oh, terrific. Is there someone that the Sports Geek listeners should follow? Maybe it's an author or someone that you follow or a colleague that someone should look up?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to give a shout out to Patrick Ryan. Patrick Ryan is the founder of Eventellect, a ticket strategy and pricing company. He's got won some incredible stories. He speaks super eloquently and detailed and from a very knowledgeable perspective about the ticketing industry as a whole. And then he's also really funny. Some of the stuff that I know a few years ago, he had a really hilarious Halloween costume that he posted and was just fantastic. So Patrick Ryan's probably my favorite follow at the current moment.
Terrific. And then lastly, it's a two-part question. What social media platform is your MVP? And you can answer it from a personal point of view, and then put your DC United analytics hat on and say, what's the social media platform that's working the best for DC United? So from a personal perspective, it was tough. It's tough between Twitter and Instagram because obviously,
pictures can elicit so many different emotions. But I would probably have to go with Twitter just because it's like a real-time newspaper for me. If you think about our parents, they actually got up in the morning and read a physical newspaper, and like we don't have that anymore. My newspaper is real time, and it is actually on Twitter with the things that I like to follow. From an organizational perspective, I know we're starting to get a little bit more into TikTok and YouTube as far as long form content goes, but I think our team does a really fantastic job on the Instagram feeds as well. So I think that's probably from a business perspective.
Terrific. And it does provide a whole bunch of options, again, from a digital plumbing point of view and a way for you to go back and sell tickets. But yeah, Instagram is one that a lot of people do say. And then, the geeks in us can say, all the opportunities of what you can do from a marketing back to your fans. Drew, what's the best way for people to connect with you, tell you that you've listened to the podcast and they've enjoyed our chat? What are the best platforms to do that on?
I would say LinkedIn is probably the best platform at the current moment. I don't do as much personal social media as I used to when I was younger, but LinkedIn is probably the best place for that.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I will include your link when I promote the show. Drew, thank you very much for coming to the podcast. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome, Sean. Thanks for setting this up, and it's great to talk to you again.
Why not book a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Drew Bentley. Please hit him up on Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever platform you do use. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/317 to see the show notes. I have all the links to how you can connect with Drew, and I really do appreciate it if you could reach out to him, tell him you listened, tell him you got an insight or something that you can use from your ticketing point of view. I'd love to hear the successes that you've had from listening to the podcast. Don't forget, back in the swing of doing things digital dollars, I want to show how digital to dollars can help and work for you and for your team. It really starts with what your objective is for digital. Are you looking at fan growth? Are you looking at digital engagement? Are you looking to deliver for your sponsors? Are you looking to increase revenue from digital? Most likely you should be nodding or saying yes to most of those questions. That's where digital dollars kicks in and where it can start. We can start by doing a review, looking at your audience, looking at your content, looking at distribution, and that can sort of start forming your digital strategy. And then you can start looking at your value and your pitch and how you can best commercialize. So please, if you're interested in digital to dollars, it works for a team, it works for a league, it works for a stadium, it works for an athlete or a coach or a personality, and also even works for a business. So please reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or if you want to look through and listen to the podcast episodes I've done, you can go to digitaltodollars.com. Before I wrap this podcast up, I wanted to run something by you as my both my podcast focus group, but also I've got friends who are listening and colleagues, people I've worked with. I want to know if this is a good idea. I'm looking to make some plans to travel in 2023. It's been something that hasn't been available to me in the last couple of years for obvious reasons. But what I want to do, and it's something that I was actually planning in 2019, is to coordinate those travel plans with some in real life meetups, events, workshops, live podcasts, those kind of things. So again, still working on what it will be, whether it will be team side. If I'm in your part of the world and you want a workshop and I come and do a workshop with you, whether it's looking at your content, looking at your audience, a brainstorming session on what you're doing, a review of some of the content that you're doing, how you're tackling a new platform. So it could be that, which is pretty much the workshops that we do on a regular basis. We've been doing them in real life and then obviously being able to do them via Zoom and via video calls recently. And then the other thing is potentially doing some live events, maybe a live podcast recording or a show or something like that. So if you're in different parts of the world, one, would you attend if I had a workshop or had an event or had a meetup in places like Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know. Is it a good idea? And if not, it could just be, hey, we catch up because I'll be in your part of the world. But please send me an email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com. If you want to put your city on my travel plans, let me know. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Need a speaker or MC at your conference or event? Contact Sean, sportsgeekhq.com/keynote. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. For more resources, go to sportsgeekhq.com.